What we've seen in Australia is a rush to renewables and at the same time a failure to invest or to extend the life cycle of coal-fired power plants. But the reality is, whether we like it or not, and some viewers might not like it, but the reality is, at the moment, to keep the lights on, we still need coal.
Yeah, I was in America last week for work, and the average American cannot believe a resource-rich country like Australia. We produce 4 times as much gas as we consume, and we're talking about importing gas into Australia. Just think about that. Like a 9-year-old at school could understand that. Makes no sense. Coal-fired power, just before we came on air, it's 70% of the New South Wales power grid at this time of the day. There is zero solar. So for Chris to say it should be zero in 4 or 5 or 6 years' time, it is an impossible task, because you think about the scale of the batteries that you need to make up for 70% of the power grid at this time of day, in this peak power period. So we just see he's rushing it. We've got nothing against renewables. There's a role for renewables. It's just the pace of it is what we're saying is madness, and he will not listen to economic common sense, and that's what worries us for the Australian economy.
And also they've been keeping secret their targets for 2035 as well, which is kind of extraordinary.
Well, Sharri, if you talk to anyone in the energy sector, like the biggest players, they don't like to say stuff publicly for fear of the government shooting their head off and that sort of thing. They all know these targets are totally unachievable. You talk to any major power retailer, gas producer, none of these targets are achievable. Only Chris Bowen is sticking to them. The transmission, when you're driving through the countryside and you see the big old power transmission lines, some of them are 50, 60, 70 years old. We've underinvested in this infrastructure for decades. You cannot just turn all this solar and wind on out in the middle of nowhere and have a stable grid. And that's what Bowen will never admit publicly.
I mean, it's putting ideology, let's face it, putting ideology above reliability.
Yeah, and I think, you look at, as I keep coming back to that stubbornness of nuclear against gas. Gas is the way we can totally change this economy. We have abundant gas resources. We could there's the Beetaloo Basin in the Northern Territory. That's the size of Bass Strait. It'll be developed and it'll be huge for the Australian economy. There's so many ways we can solve this, but to me, us importing gas is as stupid as the Saudis importing oil. Think how moronic that would be. That's what Chris Bowen's got us to.
It's insane. It really is. I mean, you think Chris Bowen, do you remember at the last federal election or the 2019 election that Bill Shorten lost? It was considered the unlosable campaign. Chris Bowen was then in the Treasury portfolio. He took these most radical tax proposals to the Australian public and he said, if you don't like them, don't vote for us. And Australians chose not to vote for him. I think once again he might play a role, along with other ministers like Penny Wong, in seriously turning Australians off the Albanese government, causing them to vote for Peter Dutton, who has put forward a nuclear energy plan. And you'd have to think, would you put Chris Bowen in charge of running a school fete?
No, I think it'd go bankrupt. Even a sausage sizzle for Chris Bowen. He is totally incompetent, and the problem we've got here is the further we go down this path, the harder it is to change. And there is no shortage of energy or natural resources in this country. It is just they have to encourage these big companies to invest and have certainty, not demonise the gas industry, the coal-fired power industry and these sort of things. That is what we need, is less of a pile on these major current energy producers and this pressure to go to renewables. And you think about his promise with Albo, $275 off your power bill at the election. You're now up about $700. So it's the reverse. So this idea of lower prices is just not achievable, to do with this renewable revolution of Chris.
It was a complete fantasy, let alone a broken promise. Well, I understand you've put a gas-fired generator in your garage, so if there's blackouts at summer, we're all coming
Sharri,
to your
I'm
house.
not a doomsday prepper, but I know there's blackouts coming in the next 5 years, thanks to Chris. And just remember, people with no history in private enterprise don't make good politicians. Chris has zero experience.
Right, well, we'll all be at your house when there's a blackout over summer.
You're welcome.
Angus, thank you so much for your time.
Sharri.
Really appreciate it.